Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I would love to know which city or state you are joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. It helps me feel a little less alone in all this. Now, let me take you into this story. You know that specific type of silence that happens right before a tornado touches down? It is heavy. It is static. It makes the fine hairs on your arms stand up. That is exactly what hit me the moment my heels clicked against the marble floor of the Grand Meridian Ballroom. I had checked the invitation 3 times before leaving the house. Nexus Innovations Annual Gala. 7 o'clock sharp. I was on time. I was dressed in a navy blue silk suit that cost more than my first car. Yet, I felt like an intruder at my own funeral. I stood in the entryway clutching a small velvet-wrapped gift box so hard my knuckles were turning white. Inside was a vintage 1958 Vacheron Constantin watch. It was a masterpiece of engineering, understated and timeless. It cost $55,000. It was exactly the kind of thing my husband Harlan said he admired but would never buy for himself. I had spent months tracking it down through a private dealer in Switzerland. It was supposed to be a surprise, a celebration of our 15th anniversary, which coincidentally fell on the same night as the company's biggest night of the year. The ballroom was dripping in excess. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars hung from the ceiling, scattering light like frozen fireworks. The centerpieces were towering arrangements of white orchids and hydrangeas that I knew for a fact cost $600 per table because I was the one who approved the budget. The air smelled of expensive perfume, roasted prime rib, and that distinct metallic scent of old money mixed with new ambition. I took a deep breath and stepped further into the room. I should have felt proud. This was my company. Well, on paper, to the world, it was Harlan's company. He was the face, the charm, the chief executive officer who gave the keynote speeches. But I was the foundation. I was the invisible architect. But tonight, the architecture felt hostile. As I navigated through the crowd, I noticed the shift in energy. Conversations did not just stop. They died unnatural deaths. People I had known for a decade, board members' wives I had hosted for brunch, investors I had sent holiday cards to, would catch my eye and then immediately look at their shoes or suddenly find something fascinating on the ceiling. Then I saw Marjorie. She was the wife of our chief financial officer. She looked like she had seen a ghost. Her hand went to her throat, clutching her pearl necklace. "Hello, Marjorie," I said, forcing a smile that felt tight on my face. "Lovely dress. Is Harlan around?" I wanted to give him this before his speech. Marjorie darted her eyes to the stage at the far end of the room, then back to me. Her expression was not friendly. It was pity. Pure unadulterated pity. It is a terrible thing to see on the face of a peer. It makes you feel small. It makes you feel naked. "Oh, honey," she whispered, taking a half step back. You did not know? You should not be here." My stomach dropped. "Know what?" "Maybe you should go back to the car," she stammered. "Really, Loretta? Do not go in there." I ignored her. A cold dread was spreading through my chest, a physical chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. I pushed past her, moving deeper into the room. The crowd was denser here, a wall of tuxedos and evening gowns, all facing the stage. Then the laughter started. It was not polite applause or the murmur of agreement. It was a roar. It was the kind of raucous, belly-shaking laughter that comes at someone else's expense. It was cruel. I elbowed my way through a group of junior developers who were holding their phones up recording. I saw the screens before I saw the reality. On a dozen phone screens, I saw my husband. I broke through the final line of people and there he was. Harlan, my husband of 15 years, the man I had built this entire life for. He was on the stage under the spotlight, looking more handsome and vibrant than I had seen him in years, and he was down on one knee. My first thought, a desperate, nonsensical attempt by my brain to protect itself, was that he had dropped something. Maybe his cuff link. But he was not looking at the floor. He was looking up. He was holding a microphone in one hand and a ring box in the other. A ring box that was open, revealing a diamond that looked like a shard of ice, easily 5 carats. And he was looking at her. Nadine. My best friend. The woman I had met in college 20 years ago. The woman I had hired as our director of operations when she was broke and desperate. The woman who had come over for wine and cheese every Friday night for the last decade, crying on my shoulder about her bad breakups while I comforted her. She stood there in a shimmering gold dress that hugged every curve. A dress I realized with a sick jolt was from the new designer collection I had mentioned liking just last week. She looked triumphant. She looked like a queen accepting tribute. Harlan's voice boomed through the speakers, amplified and crystal clear. Nadine, he said, and his voice cracked with an emotion I had not heard him direct at me since our wedding day. You are the vision behind this company. You are the fire in my life. I stood frozen. The gift box in my hand felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I am done living a half-life, Harlan continued, playing to the crowd. He turned his head slightly and for a split second his eyes scanned the room. He did not see me in the shadows, but he performed for the audience. I am ready to stop pretending. He took a breath and then he delivered the line that would end my life as I knew it. Will you leave my poor frigid wife and marry me? The room exploded. The words hung in the air, echoing off the vaulted ceiling. Frigid. Poor. The laughter that followed was a physical blow. It was a tidal wave of humiliation. It washed over me, drowning out the rational part of my brain. I looked around. People I employed, people whose mortgages were paid by the salary checks I authorized, were laughing. They were clapping. It was like witnessing a public execution where the crowd cheers for the axe. I looked at Nadine. In that moment, I expected, perhaps foolishly, to see hesitation. I expected my best friend of 20 years to look shocked, to slap him, to say, Harlan, are you crazy? Loretta is my friend. But she did not. Nadine threw her head back and laughed. It was a light tinkling sound that the microphone picked up perfectly. Then she looked down at him, her eyes gleaming with tears that looked suspiciously well rehearsed. She placed a hand on her chest, feigning surprise, even though she was wearing a dress that perfectly matched the ring setting. Yes, she screamed into the microphone he held up for her. Yes, Harlan. Finally. The crowd went wild. Someone popped a champagne cork. The band struck up a celebratory tune, something upbeat and romantic. Harlan stood up, swept her into his arms, and kissed her. It was not a quick peck. It was a deep, passionate, theatrical kiss. The kind of kiss you see in the finale of a romantic comedy. He dipped her low, and the crowd cheered louder. I stood there, a ghost in the back of the room. My heart was hammering so hard against my ribs, I thought it might crack them. My vision blurred at the edges. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to react. The primal part of my brain wanted to run up those stairs. I wanted to claw that smirk off Nadine's face. I wanted to take the heavy Vacheron Constantine watch box and smash it over Harlan's perfectly coiffed head. I wanted to grab the microphone and scream until my throat bled, telling everyone that the poor wife was the one who owned 90% of the shares they were standing on. I took a step forward. My hand trembled, but then I stopped. I remembered something my father used to tell me when he taught me how to play chess. Loretta, he would say, when your opponent makes a mistake, do not interrupt them. And when they expose their neck, do not scratch it. Wait until you can cut it off. Harlan had just exposed more than his neck. He had exposed his entire flank. He was drunk on ego. He was high on the adrenaline of public adoration. He thought he was untouchable. He thought I was the poor frigid wife sitting at home knitting or waiting by the phone. He had absolutely no idea I was in the room. And Nadine, she was basking in the glow. She had won. In her mind, she had finally taken the one thing I had that she could not replicate. My husband, my status, my life. If I made a scene now, I would just be the crazy ex-wife. I would be the frigid woman having a meltdown. I would be the entertainment. They would record me screaming and that video would live on the internet forever. I would give them exactly what they wanted, a reaction. No. I took a deep, shuddering breath. The air tasted like betrayal and expensive champagne. I looked at the happy couple one last time. I memorized the way Harlan's hand rested on the small of her back, a gesture he used to do to me. I memorized the way Nadine looked at the crowd, hungry for their validation. I tightened my grip on the gift box until the sharp corners dug into my palm, grounding me. I turned around. Loretta. It was Marjorie again, the CFO's wife. She was still standing near the entrance, looking at me with wide, terrified eyes. She must have thought I was going to pull a weapon or faint. "Are you okay?" I looked at her. Really looked at her. This woman had eaten at my table. She knew. They all knew. For how long? Months? Years? While I was working late approving budgets, were they all laughing at me? "I am fine, Marjorie," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Hollow, metallic, but steady. "Enjoy the party. I hear the cake is expensive." I did not wait for her response. I pivoted on my heel, my back straight, my chin up. I walked out of the ballroom with the same quiet dignity I had walked in with. I walked past the security guards who nodded at me, oblivious to the fact that my life had just incinerated. I walked past the coat check. I pushed through the heavy revolving doors and stepped out into the cool, damp night air of the city. The noise of the party faded instantly, replaced by the honking of taxis and the distant siren of an ambulance. My hands were shaking now. Uncontrollable tremors that started in my fingers and worked their way up to my shoulders. I leaned against a concrete pillar, gasping for air. The tears I had held back threatened to spill over, hot and stinging. "No," I whispered to myself. "Not yet. You do not get to cry yet." I pulled out my phone. My screensaver was a picture of Harlan and me from a trip to Napa 3 years ago. We looked happy. I looked at his smiling face and I felt a wave of nausea so strong I almost threw up on the sidewalk. I swiped the screen. I opened the Uber app. My fingers flew across the glass. Destination home. But it was not home anymore. It was just a crime scene where I kept my clothes. The Uber arrived in 3 minutes. It was a black sedan, sleek and anonymous. I slid into the back seat, the leather cool against the back of my legs. The interior smelled of vanilla air freshener and stale coffee. A mundane comforting smell compared to the cloying scent of lilies and deceit I had just left behind. "Rough night?" The driver caught my eyes in the rearview mirror. He was an older man, maybe 60, with kind eyes and gray hair tucked under a flat cap. His name on the app was Vernon. I looked out the window at the glittering facade of the Grand Meridian. Inside they were probably cutting the cake now. Harlan was probably making a toast, raising a glass of vintage Dom Perignon paid for by my dividends to his future with Nadine. "You have no idea, Vernon," I said softly. "Well, you are safe now," he said simply. "We will get you home." Safe. The word felt foreign. Was I safe? I had spent 20 years building a fortress of financial security, a marriage based on trust, a friendship based on shared history. And in the span of 5 minutes, I realized the fortress was made of paper, and I was holding a match. I looked down at the velvet box still clutched in my hand. The Vacheron Constantin. It was a beautiful object. It represented hours of craftsmanship. It represented the time I had spent thinking about Harlan, loving him, wanting to give him something that signified forever. Now it just looked like a bribe, a pathetic attempt to buy the affection of a man who was already sleeping with my best friend. "Vernon," I asked, "do you like watches?" He chuckled, keeping his eyes on the road. "I use my phone, ma'am. Time is time. Does not matter if it is on a Rolex or a screen." Smart man. I rolled down the window. The wind whipped into the car, messing up the hair I had spent an hour styling. We were crossing the bridge now, the dark water of the river turning below us. I held the box out the window. "Ma'am," Vernon asked, his voice alarmed. I did not hesitate. I did not think about the $55,000. I did not think about the rarity of the item. I just opened my fingers. The box tumbled into the darkness. It was gone in an instant, swallowed by the night and the river below. I pulled my hand back in and rolled up the window. A strange sensation washed over me. I expected regret. I expected panic. Instead, I felt lighter. $55,000 lighter. It was the first piece of ballast thrown overboard. The ship was still sinking, but at least I was lightening the load. "Did you just?" Vernon trailed off. "It was garbage," I said. "Just expensive garbage." The rest of the ride was silent. I rested my head against the cool glass and watched the city blur by. I thought about the divorce laws in our state. I thought about the corporate bylaws of Nexus Innovations. I thought about the biometric safe in my home office. I was glad there were no children involved. At least I would not have to fight a messy custody battle over kids who would have had to see their father's true face. When we pulled up to the curb of my building, the penthouse Harlan insisted we buy because it had a status address, I sat there for a moment. "We are here, ma'am," Vernon said gently. I looked at the building. It loomed above me, a tower of glass and steel. It looked cold. It looked empty. "Thank you, Vernon," I said. I tipped him $100 on the app. It was the only kindness I had received all night, and I wanted to reward it. I walked into the lobby. The night doorman smiled at me. "Good evening, Mrs. Monroe." "Early night." "Mr. Monroe is not with you." "Mr. Monroe is detained," I said, my voice flat. "He is having a very big night." "Oh, that is good." "He works hard." "Yes," I said, stepping into the elevator. "He certainly has been working on something." The elevator ride to the 45th floor took 20 seconds. 20 seconds of watching the numbers climb. 20 seconds to compose myself. When the doors opened directly into our foyer, the silence of the penthouse hit me. It was usually a peaceful silence. Tonight, it felt like the silence of a tomb. I kicked off my heels, leaving them right there in the middle of the hallway. I walked into the kitchen, the marble floors cold against my stocking feet. I did not turn on the lights. The glow from the city skyline outside the floor-to-ceiling windows provided enough illumination. I went straight to the bar cart. I bypassed the wine. I reached for the bottle of whiskey, a single malt scotch that Harlan saved for special occasions. I poured myself a glass. Neat. I took a sip, letting the burn ground me. Then I walked into my office. Not the shared study where Harlan played video games and pretended to work. My office. The small soundproof room at the back of the penthouse where the real work happened. I sat down in my ergonomic chair. I looked at the dual monitors that were currently dark. I was not crying anymore. The tears had dried up in the Uber. Now there was only clarity. Cold, hard, binary clarity. I had built this company. I had built this life. I had built Harlan. And now I was going to dismantle them all, brick by brick, dollar by dollar. But first, I had to understand how I had been so blind. I had to look at the data. I had to re-examine the source code of my life to find the bugs. And the biggest bug of all had a name. Nadine. It is easy to see the red flags when you are looking in the rearview mirror. But when you are driving 90 miles an hour down the highway of life, they just look like decorations. I sat there in the dark, the whiskey warming my blood, and I let myself remember. I met Nadine in our sophomore year of college. I was the quiet girl in the front row of the lecture hall, taking meticulous notes with color-coded pens. Nadine was the girl who burst in 10 minutes late, holding a coffee cup, looking effortlessly chaotic and beautiful. She had a laugh that made you want to be in on the joke and a way of looking at you that made you feel chosen. She chose me. Or rather, she targeted me. "Hey," she had whispered during a midterm exam, leaning over so far her hair brushed my arm. "What is the answer to number 4? I should have covered my paper. I should have ignored her. Instead, I slid my arm slightly to the left. That was the dynamic for the next 20 years. Nadine needed and I provided. She called it friendship. I see now it was parasitism. I remember our senior year. We were roommates in a drafty off-campus apartment. The heat barely worked, and we survived on cheap noodles and instant coffee. I was working 2 part-time jobs, one at the library and one tutoring, to pay my share of the rent. Nadine did not work. She said she was focusing on her art, which mostly involved sleeping until noon and dating guys with motorcycles. One night, I came home exhausted, carrying a bag of groceries I had budget shopped for. Nadine was sitting on our thrift store couch, crying. "What is wrong?" I asked, dropping the bags. "It is my tuition," she sobbed, wiping her mascara-stained cheeks. "My dad, he did not send the check. They are going to kick me out, Loretta. I will not be able to graduate with you." My heart broke for her. The thought of graduating without my best friend seemed impossible. We were a team, Loretta and Nadine. The brains and the beauty. "How much is it?" I asked. 2,000, she whispered. That was my entire savings. It was the money I had scraped together for a down payment on a car so I would not have to take the bus to my internship. My grandmother had always told me to save for a rainy day. This felt like a monsoon. "I will lend it to you," I said. She stopped crying instantly. "You would? Oh my goodness, Loretta. You are my savior. I swear I will pay you back as soon as I sell my painting." She never sold the painting. She never paid me back. And when I bought a rusty used car 3 months later because that was all I could afford after giving her my money, she made fun of it. "Oh, honey," she laughed, sitting in the passenger seat with her muddy boots on the dashboard. "This car smells like old soup, but it suits you. You are so practical." Practical. That was her favorite word for me. It was a backhanded compliment. It meant boring. It meant safe. It meant I was the soil and she was the flower. Fast forward 10 years. I was building Nexus. I was lonely. I was working 18-hour days, staring at lines of code until my eyes blurred. Nadine had bounced from job to job. Marketing assistant, event planner, yoga instructor. She showed up at my office one day looking desperate. "I need a job, Loretta," she said. "Just something to get me back on my feet. I am drowning." I hired her. I created a position for her, Director of Culture. It was a fluff title with a serious salary. I started her at $80,000 a year. "You are the best," she squealed, hugging me tightly. "We are going to rule the world together." But she did not work. She gossiped. She planned happy hours. She flirted with the interns and she constantly undermined me. I remember a meeting about 3 years ago. I had just presented a new strategic direction for our software. I was proud of it. It was complex, innovative. Nadine raised her hand. "Loretta, honey, that is all great," she said in front of the entire executive team. "But it is so dry. No one buys algorithms. They buy feelings. Maybe you should let Harlan handle the vision. You just do the typing." The room laughed. Harlan laughed. She is right, babe, Harlan had said, patting my hand condescendingly. You are the engine. Let us be the paint job. I felt humiliated. I felt small, but I swallowed it. Why? Because I thought they loved me. I thought they were protecting me from my own social awkwardness. I was the ugly duckling who paid for the pond so the swans could swim. I took another sip of whiskey. The burn was familiar now. I looked back at the memory of Nadine at the party tonight. The way she looked at Harlan, it was not new. I realized with a physical jolt that I had seen that look before. Last Christmas, we were at my house. Nadine was wearing a red dress that was a little too short. She and Harlan were in the kitchen making cocktails. I was in the living room setting up the tree. I heard them laughing. A low intimate laugh. I had walked in and they jumped apart. Just spilled some vermouth, Nadine had chirped. Her face was flushed. I believed her. I was so remarkably stupid. I believed her because the alternative was unthinkable. Who betrays the person who paid their rent? Who steals the husband of the woman who signed their promotion paperwork and their paychecks for a decade? A snake. That is who. But here is the thing about snakes. They are cold-blooded. They only move when they are warm. And I had been keeping Nadine warm for 20 years. I had provided the heat, the shelter, the food. Tonight, I had finally stopped being the heat lamp. I sat in my dark office, rubbing my temples. I thought about the corporate credit card Nadine carried, the business trips she went on, the consulting fees I had approved for her department. I pulled a notepad toward me. I wrote down a name, Nadine, and next to it, I wrote a single word. Evict. Not just from her apartment, which I knew for a fact she paid for with her salary from my company, but from my life, from my history. But Nadine was just the parasite. The host was the problem. The host was Harlan. And his betrayal cut deeper because he was not just my friend. He was my husband. Or so I thought. If Nadine was the parasite, Harlan was the project. I met Harlan a year after college. I was working as a junior back-end developer for a logistics firm, hiding in a cubicle, wearing oversized sweaters, and listening to audiobooks while I coded. Harlan was in sales. He was everything I was not. Loud, charismatic, tall, with a smile that could sell ice to a polar bear. He walked into the break room one day while I was making tea. "You are Loretta, right?" he asked, leaning against the vending machine. "The genius who fixed the server crash last week?" I blushed. No one ever called me a genius. They called me tech support or hey you. I just did my job, I mumbled. "Well, you saved my commission check," he said, flashing that dazzling smile. "Let me buy you dinner." A real dinner, not vending machine crackers. I fell in love with him over appetizers. I fell in love with the way he listened to me talk about data structures without yawning. I fell in love with the way he made me feel visible. But looking back, I wonder, did he see me or did he see the inheritance? My grandmother had passed away 6 months before I met Harlan. Her funeral was a small, quiet affair. She was a frugal, stern woman who had invested wisely in the stock market since the 1950s. Originally, she had set up a small college fund for me, but it grew. When she died, she left me everything. $2.5 million. It was a secret. I did not tell people at work. I drove my rusty used car. I lived in my cheap apartment. I was terrified that if people knew, they would treat me differently. But I told Harlan. We were 6 months into dating. We were lying in bed on a Sunday morning, the sun streaming through the blinds. "I have an idea for a company," I whispered, tracing the pattern on his chest. "A new way to integrate cloud storage with sorting. But I need capital." "Capital is hard to find," Harlan sighed, staring at the ceiling. "Banks hate risk." "I have the money," I said. I told him about the inheritance. I watched his eyes widen. I watched the wheels turn behind that handsome face. Loretta, he said, grabbing my hands and squeezing them tight. This is it. This is our destiny. You have the brain. You have the money. I have the sales skills. We can build an empire. And we did. Or rather, I funded it. And he named it Nexus Innovations, he declared one evening over wine. It sounds powerful. When it came time to incorporate, I made the decision that would define the next 15 years of my life. I was terrified of public speaking. I hated confrontation. The idea of pitching to investors made me hyperventilate. You be the chief executive officer, I told Harlan. You be the face. I will take the title of chief technology officer. I will stay in the back and make it work. You go out there and sell it. Are you sure? He asked, but he did not ask twice. He looked at the CEO placard on the desk we bought and puffed out his chest. We went to a lawyer to draw up the papers. Thaddeus. He was an old friend of my grandmother's. He was a sharp, no-nonsense man who looked at Harlan with suspicion from day one. We sat in his oak-paneled office, the smell of old paper and leather heavy in the air. Loretta, Thaddeus had said, looking over his spectacles directly at me, ignoring Harlan. If you are putting up 100% of the capital and doing 100% of the product development, you should retain controlling interest. Of course, I said. I will keep 90% of the shares. Harlan can have 10% as a founding partner, but I want him to have voting rights on daily operations. I do not want to be bothered with the administrative stuff. Thaddeus frowned deeply, his bushy eyebrows knitting together. He drafted the papers, but he added a clause. A clause I had almost forgotten about until tonight. The kill switch, Thaddeus had called it privately to me. What is this? Harlan had asked, flipping impatiently through the 50-page document, clearly bored by the legal jargon. Standard boilerplate, I had lied, covering for Thaddeus to avoid an argument. Just protecting the assets in case of hostile takeovers. Right. Right, Harlan said, signing his name with a flourish. He did not read it. He never read anything longer than a paragraph. That clause stated that while the chief executive officer had operational control, the majority shareholder, me, retained super-administrative access to all financial and operational decisions. It also stated that any breach of fiduciary duty, including using corporate funds for personal affairs, constituted an immediate breach of contract, triggering a clause that allowed the majority shareholder to freeze all assets and terminate the CEO without board approval. For 15 years, Harlan played king. He hired the staff. He gave the interviews to business magazines. He took the credit. I built this company from a garage, he would brag at dinner parties, holding a glass of expensive scotch. I stood next to him, smiling quietly, holding his drink when he needed both hands to tell a story. He worked so hard, I would agree when people praised him. I let him have the glory because I thought we were partners. I thought his win was my win. I thought we were building a legacy. But Harlan became addicted to the lifestyle my code provided. The tailored suits, the first-class flights, the country club memberships. And slowly his respect for me eroded. Loretta, do not bore the guests with tech talk, he would whisper harshly at dinners, pinching my arm under the table. Loretta, buy a new dress, you look like a librarian. Loretta, you are so frigid. Loosen up. Frigid. That word again. The word he used tonight on stage. I was not frigid. I was exhausted. I was carrying the weight of a multi-million-dollar corporation on my back while he played celebrity. I looked at the wedding photo on my desk. Harlan looked triumphant. I looked adoring. I picked up the frame. The silver felt cold against my skin. I looked at his smile. The smile of a man who thought he had fooled the world. You did not build this, Harlan, I whispered to the empty room. You did not write a single line of code. You did not stay up until 4 in the morning debugging the servers. You are just the mascot. And what do you do with a mascot when they start tackling their own team? You fire them. I set the frame down, face down flat on the mahogany desk. I turned to my computer. I wiggled the mouse. The dual screens hummed to life, glowing with the crisp blue light of the Nexus operating system. My system. It was time to go to work. I poured myself another finger of whiskey. My hands were perfectly steady now. The trembling from the street had been replaced by a cold, rhythmic drumming of my fingers against the desk. I logged into the Nexus mainframe. Usually, I logged in as CTO Evans. It gave me access to the code, the product roadmaps, the server status. Tonight, I did not use that login. I typed in a username that had not been used in 5 years. Admin_prime password. I typed it in. It was a string of 30 characters, a combination of my grandmother's birthday, the chemical formula for caffeine, and the coordinates of the first apartment where I wrote the Nexus source code. Access granted. The screen shifted. The interface changed from the friendly blue of the employee portal to a stark red and black command center. This was the back end. The God mode. I navigated to the financial oversight module. First, I wanted to see the damage. I pulled up the corporate credit card statements for Harlan Monroe CEO and Nadine Thorne COO. I scrolled, and as I scrolled, my jaw tightened. The anger I felt earlier was nothing compared to the white-hot rage building inside me now. It was not just a few expensive dinners. Ritz-Carlton, Maui. $15,000. Dates coincided with his supposedly grueling tech conference in Seattle. Tiffany & Company. $52,000. The receipt for the ring. He bought her engagement ring on the company card. The audacity was breathtaking. He was proposing to his mistress using my money. Automated Porsche lease payments. $2,500 per month. Nadine's car. And then, I saw the line item that made my heart stop entirely. Fertility clinic, Upper East Side. $1,500. I stopped scrolling. I stared at that last line item until the letters blurred. Fertility clinic. I could not breathe. For 5 years, I had asked Harlan about starting a family. For 5 years, Harlan had told me he was not ready for kids. The company is our baby, Loretta, he would say, stroking my hair. We need to focus on the growth. We will talk about it next year. He was not ready for kids with me. But he was paying for a fertility clinic with Nadine. A primal roar built up in my throat, a sound of pure agony and betrayal. But I swallowed it down. Rage is a fire. If you let it out uncontrolled, it burns your own house down. If you keep it in, if you compress it, it becomes an engine. Okay, I whispered to the glowing monitors. You want to play with the company money? Let's see how you like it when the bank vault slams shut. I opened the emergency protocols folder on my glowing desktop. There it was, a specific file named Protocol Ice Age. I had originally written this aggressive script 10 years ago, late one night after a terrible argument where Harlan had threatened to leave me if I did not stop nagging him about his lavish corporate expenses. I had written it as a fail-safe. I never thought I would actually use it. I double-clicked the icon. A red dialog box popped up on the center of my screen. Warning. This action will freeze all assets associated with Nexus Innovations' primary operating accounts. All outgoing transfers will be halted. All corporate credit lines will be suspended. Executive override required to reverse. Do you wish to proceed? I moved the mouse over the yes button. I thought about the poor frigid wife comment echoing through the ballroom. I thought about the cruel laughter of the people whose salaries I paid. I thought about the fertility clinic bill for my best friend. I clicked yes. Processing. Protocol active. Assets frozen. I was not done. I navigated directly to the travel management system portal. I saw an upcoming itinerary sitting right at the top of the queue. A flight from New York to St. Bart's. First class. 2 passengers. Harlan Monroe and Nadine Thorne. Departure tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. They were going on their engagement honeymoon tomorrow using my money. I clicked the cancel reservation button. A prompt asked for the reason for cancellation. I typed the words fraudulent activity. Refund processed to corporate account. The account that was now completely frozen. They would not just be grounded. They would be stranded. Next, I went to the Human Resources portal. I pulled up Nadine's employee file. Status active. Salary $250,000 plus bonuses. I clicked the edit button. I changed her status to suspended, pending investigation. I checked the boxes to revoke her access to the building and disable her company email address. I attached a note to her file detailing gross misconduct. I did the exact same thing for Harlan. But for him, I added a severe flag. Breach of fiduciary duty. This specific code would automatically alert the board of directors that a formal internal audit had been triggered by the system administrator. Finally, I sent a command to the building security system of our headquarters. Invalidate credentials for Harlan Monroe and Nadine Thorne. Tomorrow morning, when they tried to swipe their badges to get into the office to brag about their grand engagement, the light would turn red. I sat back in my chair. It had taken me 12 minutes. In 12 minutes, I had cut off their money, their travel, their jobs, and their access to the empire they thought they ruled. I closed the laptop, but I did not shut it down. I left it glowing in the dark, a digital eye watching over the destruction I had just unleashed. I went to the bedroom, took off the diamond earrings Harlan had given me 5 years ago, and dropped them in the trash can in the bathroom. I went to bed, and for the first time in a decade, I slept peacefully. I woke up at 7 in the morning naturally. For a split second, I forgot everything. I reached out across the bed, expecting to feel Harlan's warmth. My hand hit cool, empty sheets. Then the memory of the ballroom crashed down on me. But instead of pain, I felt a massive surge of adrenaline. It was game day. I got up and went to the kitchen. I made cheap dark roast drip coffee that I loved and Harlan absolutely hated. I walked over to the kitchen island where I had left my phone charging. I tapped the screen. It lit up with notifications. 157 missed calls. 84 text messages. 22 voicemails. I scrolled through the massive list. Harlan, 42 calls. Nadine, 15 calls. Bank fraud alert text messages. And then I saw her name. Blanche Monroe. My mother-in-law. 12 calls. The woman who had criticized my wedding dress, my cooking, and my inability to give her a handsome grandson. I picked up the phone and sat on a tall bar stool. I clicked on the most recent voicemail from Harlan, timestamped at 6:45 in the morning. Loretta. Pick up the phone. What is going on? We are at the hotel and the card was declined. They would not let us check out. I had to call my dad to wire money to the front desk. It was humiliating. And now I cannot log into my email. If this is about last night, you are overreacting. It was a joke, Loretta. A performance for the crowd. Call me back right now or I swear to God. I said the word aloud to the empty room. A joke. He was going to try to spin a very public proposal to his mistress as a comedic bit. Then the phone rang again right in my hand. The caller identification flashed. Blanche Monroe. I swiped the green button to accept the call. Hello, Blanche. Loretta. Her voice was a sharp screech. What have you done? Harlan just called me from the airport. He says they cannot print their boarding passes. He says you cut off his money. I did not cut off his money, Blanche, I said calmly. I froze the company's assets. There is a very big difference. If Harlan has his own personal money, he is welcome to use it. His own money? Everything is his money. He is the chief executive officer. He built that place. He was the chief executive officer, I corrected her smoothly. As of 1 o'clock this morning, he is under formal investigation for gross embezzlement. Embezzlement? She gasped loudly. How dare you? After everything he has done for you. And because you are jealous of a little innocent friendship with Nadine, you do this? He proposed to her, Blanche. On a public stage. While calling me ugly and frigid in front of hundreds of people. Stop being so overly dramatic, Blanche scoffed. Men have needs, Loretta. If you were a better, more attentive wife, he would not look elsewhere. You should be apologizing to him. You should be begging him to come back to you. Fix this, Loretta. Fix it right now. And Blanche, I interrupted, my voice dropping an octave, becoming ice cold. That platinum credit card you use for your weekly country club lunches with your friends. The one Harlan graciously gave you 2 years ago. Silence fell on the other end of the line. That is a company corporate card, Blanche. It is currently sitting in my audit file. Every single salad you ate. Every single glass of expensive wine you drank. It is all marked as corporate fraud. You might want to bring actual cash to your card game next week. I hung up the phone. I went into my settings and blocked her number. Then I blocked Harlan. Then I blocked Nadine. The absolute silence that followed was exquisite. I was not hiding from them. I was preparing. The intercom on the wall buzzed loudly. I looked at the video monitor. It was the lobby doorman. Mrs. Monroe. There is a Mr. Quincy Stevens here to see you. He says he works for Harlan. He looks like he is about to pass out on my floor. Send him up immediately, I said. When I opened the front door, Quincy looked like he had run a marathon all the way from the office building. His tie was askew, his hair was a messy mop, and he was sweating heavily. Mrs. Monroe. Oh, thank goodness, he gasped. I did not know where else to go. Harlan is not answering his phone. Nadine is not answering. And the office is on fire. Metaphorically speaking. Breathe, Quincy, I said, gesturing toward the spacious living room. Come in. Do you want a cup of coffee? Coffee? Mrs. Monroe, the entire system is down. Everything is locked. The weekly payroll failed completely. The server room itself is locked down physically. The key cards do not work at all. And there is a massive red message on the main company dashboard. It just says audit in progress. Is the company going under? I walked over to the coffee pot, poured a large mug, and handed it to him. His hands shook so much the hot liquid sloshed over the ceramic side. The company is not going under, Quincy, I said in a very calm, measured tone. It is simply being restructured. Restructured by who? Quincy asked. Harlan is stuck at the airport. He sent me a furious text message screaming about technical glitches and told me to come find you immediately because you broke the internet. I did not break it, I said, sitting down gracefully on the sofa opposite him. I fixed it. Quincy, who signs your weekly salary checks? Nexus Innovations, he answered automatically. And who actually owns Nexus Innovations? Well, Harlan. Mr. Monroe. He founded it in a garage. No, I said softly but firmly. He did not. I did. I wrote the core code, Quincy. I own 90% of the total shares. Harlan owns a mere 10%. And last night, Harlan formally violated his legal contract by attempting to use company funds to fly his mistress, your direct boss, Nadine, to a luxury resort in St. Bart's. Quincy's mouth fell completely open. Mistress? Nadine? You did not know? I mean, they spent a lot of time together behind closed doors, but, he trailed off, his face flushing a deep red. It is entirely okay, Quincy. You were just doing your assigned job. But now your job is changing. I stood up and walked over to the mahogany desk. I picked up a thick manila envelope I had meticulously prepared. This is not a technical glitch, I said, handing him the heavy envelope. This is a hostile takeover by the actual owner. This is for Harlan. I need you to give this envelope directly to him. What do I tell him when I see him? Tell him there are absolutely no bugs in the computer system. Tell him the system is working perfectly, exactly as it was originally designed. Mrs. Monroe, he said tentatively. What about the payroll? The developers and the janitorial staff. They have rent to pay. I know, I said gently. I have already set up a manual administrative override for the general staff payroll. It will process normally by noon today. But the executive payroll, that is permanently frozen. Harlan and Nadine are not getting paid today, tomorrow, or ever again. Quincy, update your resume this afternoon. I am going to need a brand new director of operations to replace Nadine very soon. He turned and walked out the door. He walked a little taller and a little faster than when he came in. The pawn had been officially sent across the board. I picked up the phone and dialed a specific number I had not called in many years. Henderson Law Offices, a gruff voice answered. Hello, Thaddeus, I said smoothly. It is Loretta Evans. Not Monroe. Evans. Loretta, he said, his tone instantly shifting from professional boredom to high alert. I have been waiting for this exact phone call for 15 long years. Is it finally time? It is time, I said. Using corporate funds for personal luxury travel. Massive embezzlement. And public humiliation on a grand scale. I saw the video, Thaddeus grunted. It is currently trending highly on the internet. It proves clear intent to humiliate, severe alienation of affection, and it publicly documents their illicit relationship. What exactly do you want to do? I want the scorched earth protocol, I said without a single ounce of hesitation. I am sending you the rough draft of the terms right now. I need you to make them legally bulletproof by noon today. I spent the next 2 uninterrupted hours drafting the formal document. Clause 1. Immediate formal resignation. Harlan Monroe would resign as Chief Executive Officer effective immediately. Clause 2. Termination of Nadine Thorne. Immediate termination for absolute cause. Clause 3. Restitution. I had meticulously calculated the unauthorized personal spending over the last 5 years. The expensive dinners, the luxury trips, the lavish gifts, the lease on Nadine's sports car, the expensive apartment she lived in. It totaled exactly $4.2 million. Harlan would formally agree to repay the entire sum personally to the company, or he would face immediate criminal charges for grand corporate theft. Clause 4. The non-disclosure agreement and strict non-compete. Clause 5. Public admission. My phone buzzed sharply on the desk. A text message from Quincy. Delivered. He is at Nadine's apartment right now. He is reading it right now. 10 minutes later, my phone rang loudly. It was Milton from the board of directors. Loretta, we have a massive situation on our hands, Milton sounded completely out of breath. We have received a critical notification from the main bank. Harlan is not answering his phone at all. We are hearing terrible rumors circulating about an affair. It is not a rumor, Milton, I said. It was a live broadcast last night. Harlan is attempting to use company funds to finance his new romantic life with Nadine. I have frozen all the operating accounts to protect the shareholders' investments. You froze the accounts? Loretta, you absolutely cannot do that. You are not the executive in charge. Actually, Milton, if you take a moment to check the official incorporation bylaws, you will plainly see that as the majority stakeholder holding 90% equity, I have total emergency powers in the event of executive malfeasance. I strongly suggest you officially call an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock sharp. I will personally be there to accept Harlan's forced resignation and clearly present the full forensic accounting of his massive theft. Do I make myself perfectly clear? Milton sputtered. Yes. Tomorrow morning. 9 o'clock. I hung up the phone. The intercom on the wall buzzed again. Mrs. Monroe, the doorman sounded very nervous. Miss Thorne is down here in the lobby. She is screaming and demanding to come up to the penthouse. Let her come up anyway, I said. I walked over and deliberately left the heavy front door unlocked. The front door flew open violently, hitting the wall with a bang. Nadine stormed in like a hurricane. She was wearing large, dark sunglasses inside the dimly lit apartment. She ripped them off her face. You crazy woman, she screamed at the top of her lungs, throwing her heavy bag aggressively onto my pristine sofa. What exactly is wrong with you? You cut off my credit card. You locked me completely out of the computer system. Do you have any idea who I am? I was sitting comfortably in the armchair. Hello, Nadine, I said quietly. I see you did not make it to the beautiful beaches of St. Bart's today. Do not play cute with me, Loretta. She marched heavily across the rug, pointing a sharp finger directly in my face. You are ruining absolutely everything. Harlan is having a massive panic attack on the floor in my living room right now. We were supposed to be out celebrating our love today. Celebrating what exactly? I asked. Sleeping with my husband in my own house, or stealing my money for 5 years? I did not steal anything from anyone. I earned that money with my hard work. I built the cultural brand from the ground up. You planned happy hour parties, Nadine, I said. And you slept with the chief executive officer. That is not a corporate skill set. Her face turned a violently blotchy shade of red. How dare you speak to me like that? You are just incredibly jealous. You have always been terribly jealous of me. I was always the one people actually wanted to be around. You were just the wallet. The boring, plain, pathetic little wallet. Harlan just needed a quiet, respectable wife to look good while he built his massive empire. Now that he has finally made it big, he does not need the boring prop anymore. He needs a real partner. Me. I stood up then. Very slowly. He did not build the empire, Nadine, I said. And neither did you. I walked slowly over to the glass coffee table and picked up a thick folder. I tossed it forcefully toward her. It slid across the polished wood surface and stopped dead right at her boots. What is this garbage? She sneered. Open it and look. She hesitated, then bent down and flipped the heavy cover open. This is a complete forensic audit of your personal spending, I said. Page 1. The luxury Porsche lease. Page 2. The expensive monthly rent on your apartment. Page 3. The high tuition for your niece's private school. Page 4. The $50,000 you randomly transferred to your mother's bank account. I watched her manicured hands start to shake violently. Harlan formally approved all of this spending, she stammered, her voice suddenly losing all its aggressive volume. Harlan does not possess the legal authority to approve grand theft, I said coldly. This is formally classified as embezzlement. Felony embezzlement, Nadine. You are currently looking at up to 25 years in a federal prison. She dropped the heavy folder. It hit the floor with a loud slap. Prison? She whispered. I have already sent a full copy to the district attorney's office. And I sent another full copy directly to the Internal Revenue Service. That is severe tax evasion. Loretta, wait, she said, her entire demeanor changing instantly. Loretta, please. We are best friends. You cannot send me to a horrible jail. I did not know it was illegal. Harlan manipulated my feelings. I am a victim in this too. You are not a victim, Nadine, I said, walking slowly closer to her. You are a parasite. I let you feed on me for years because I was deeply lonely. But I am not lonely anymore. I am just incredibly angry. I can fix this whole mess, she cried, reaching out desperately to grab my hand. I will break up with him today. I swear to you. I will testify against him in court. Just do not put me in a jail cell. Loretta, please think of all the wonderful good times we had together. The good times? I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. You mean the times when I did your difficult college homework for you? Or the times when I paid your overdue rent? Or when you slept with my husband in my own house? She flinched violently. Get out, I said quietly. Loretta, please. Get out. I screamed at the absolute top of my lungs. Get completely out of my house. Get out of my company. Get out of my life forever. If I ever see your face again, I will destroy your reputation so thoroughly that you will not be able to get a minimum wage job scrubbing dirty toilets in this city. She scrambled backward in sheer panic, grabbed her bag, and ran as fast as she could. I heard the heavy front door slam shut behind her. I locked the heavy deadbolt. One parasite down. One more to go. If you've made it this far, please do me a favor, like the video and comment number 1 down below. It lets me know how awesome you are and shows that you're right here with me on this journey. Your support is a massive encouragement and truly motivates me. Drop that one so I can recognize you, and now, let's get back to my story. Harlan knocked on the door at 11:30 at night. It was a very soft, incredibly hesitant knock. I slowly opened the heavy door. He looked absolutely pathetic. His expensive tuxedo shirt was completely unbuttoned at the top. His silk tie was gone. And he smelled strongly of stale scotch, cheap hotel soap, and cold fear. Loretta, he croaked, his voice raw and raspy. Come in, Harlan, I said coldly. He walked slowly into the living room and looked around wildly. He looked at the 2 small cardboard boxes packed neatly near the door. His boxes. You packed my things, he said. I packed the few things you actually paid for with your own personal money, I said. It is a very small pile. He slumped heavily onto the sofa. He put his head in his shaking hands and started to cry. I ruined absolutely everything, he sobbed. Nadine, she got inside my head. Loretta, she made me feel like I was a superhero. She constantly said you did not appreciate my hard work. She said you were purposely holding me back from greatness. And you actually believed her lies? I asked. I was weak. He looked up, thick tears streaming down his flushed face. I am a man, Loretta. I have physical needs. You are always working late. I felt deeply lonely in this big house. You were lonely while I was working exhausting hours to pay for the luxury Ferrari you drove to her apartment, I said. He stood up unsteadily and tried to walk toward me with his arms out. But we can fix this terrible mistake. Loretta, please remember us. We were an unstoppable team. You and me against the whole world. There is absolutely no us anymore, Harlan. There is just the legal plaintiff and the legal defendant. His face hardened slightly. You cannot completely destroy me, Loretta. The company absolutely needs me. I am the famous face. The corporate stock will tank immediately if I leave. The wealthy investors love me. The wealthy investors love the massive profit margins, I corrected him. And once I explicitly show them the clear math that proves you personally cost them over $4 million in blatant theft, they will love seeing you led away in shiny silver handcuffs even more. Okay, he said, his voice changing drastically. It became lower, meaner, filled with venom. You want to play hardball with me? Let us play. I have damaging things on you too, Loretta. The proposal video from the gala. I have the original digital file. If you fire me, if you try to ruin me financially, I will release the full, unedited version to the press. The one where the camera pans directly to you walking away in the dark. You looked incredibly pathetic, Loretta. Walking out the door like a scared little coward. People will laugh at you endlessly. You will be the absolute laughingstock of Silicon Valley. I will confidently tell everyone we had a modern open marriage and you just got crazy jealous because I chose her over you. I will ruin your quiet reputation. I calmly pulled my phone out of my pocket. Is this the specific video you mean? I asked, opening my digital gallery. I had quietly downloaded the live stream file earlier in the evening. I pressed play. We both watched the tiny glowing figures on the small screen. Him kneeling down. Me turning and walking away into the shadows. Yeah, he said. That is the one. Harlan, I said slowly. I legally own the strict copyright to that live stream. It was officially filmed by Nexus Company Equipment, at a privately funded Nexus corporate event. If you dare to post it anywhere, I will ruthlessly sue you for severe copyright infringement right on top of the felony embezzlement charges. And just so we are perfectly clear on exactly how little leverage you actually have over me, I pressed the trash icon on the screen. Delete. Then I navigated to the recently deleted folder. Delete all. I held up the completely blank phone screen to his face. I do not need to hide the ugly truth, Harlan. The absolute truth is my sharpest weapon. You think people will laugh at me? Maybe they will for a single day. But do you know what they will remember forever? They will remember that I am the brilliant woman who fired you. They will remember that I am the one who kept all the millions of dollars. And they will clearly remember that you are just a broke, pathetic, middle-aged fraud who completely lost the golden goose because he simply got too greedy. The nasty fight went out of his body completely. He physically collapsed backward onto the soft cushions. Please, he whispered. I have absolutely nothing left. Nadine kicked me out of the apartment. She screamed that I was a terrible financial investment. All my credit cards are completely frozen. I cannot even get a cheap hotel room for the night. Do not do this to me, Loretta. Sign the legal papers, Harlan, I said, pointing a steady finger at the thick envelope sitting on the coffee table. Sign them right now, and I will not call the police department tonight. You can sleep in the spare guest room down the hall. One night only. And you must leave before the sun comes up. If you do not sign every single page, I will call the police right now and formally report a $4 million corporate theft. He reached into his expensive jacket pocket for a pen. He pulled out a cheap, clear plastic pen. He signed his name on the dotted lines. I picked up the papers. It was done. The guest room is straight down the hall, I said. Do not touch anything on your way. At exactly 5 a.m, I heard the front door click shut softly. He was gone. He had taken his 2 meager boxes and left long before sunrise. I walked into the kitchen and checked my phone. The dramatic story had broken wide open while I rested. The humiliating video of the public proposal had hit every major social media platform. A video from a young user had suddenly gone incredibly viral. She was a former summer intern at Nexus Innovations. You guys are laughing at her? Do you have any idea who that woman actually is? That is Loretta Evans. She personally wrote the entire Nexus code from scratch. Harlan is just a useless empty suit. Loretta fixed a massive server crash wearing her pajamas at 3 a.m. She is the absolute genius. He is just a clown. Team Loretta. The hashtag Team Loretta was rapidly trending worldwide. I saw a long public post from my former mother-in-law, Blanche. My poor, sweet son is being viciously victimized by a vindictive, crazy woman who unfairly controls the purse strings. Loretta has always been deeply jealous of his massive public success. Pray for Harlan. But the hundreds of comments underneath her post were not supportive. Blanche, did your son not cheat on her publicly on a livestream? Sit this one out, lady. Jealous of his success? Lady, she bought the house you live in. My corporate email inbox was suddenly flooded with hundreds of messages from my employees. Subject line, standing with you. Mrs. Monroe, or Ms. Evans. I just wanted to quickly say that the entire engineering team is firmly behind you today. We all know exactly who built this place. Do not let him take it from you. I walked into my massive closet. I aggressively pushed aside the boring gray suits. I reached all the way into the very back of the deep closet to a protective garment bag. It was a brilliant white suit. Sharp, perfectly tailored, architectural. I put it on. I put on a pair of sky-high red stiletto heels. Shoes Harlan had specifically said were far too aggressive for a wife. I applied a thick layer of bold red lipstick. I grabbed my heavy leather briefcase. Inside were the signed resignation papers, the thick forensic audit detailing the massive theft, and the formal termination notice for Nadine. I stepped out onto the busy city street. The morning air was crisp and clean. "Where to, lady?" the cab driver asked loudly. "Nexus Tower," I said. "And step on it. I have a massive company to take back today." The grand lobby of the Nexus Tower was absolutely buzzing. Today, I stopped dead in the exact center of the massive glass atrium. The bright white suit acted exactly like a shining beacon. People turned their heads. Loud conversation stopped abruptly. I saw heads leaning together, whispering furiously. I stood incredibly tall. I saw Thaddeus waiting patiently by the private executive elevators. He smiled broadly when he saw me approaching. "You look exactly like the beautiful angel of death," he said approvingly. "Are you ready, Thaddeus?" "I was born ready for this day, Loretta." I heard through the grapevine that Harlan is already upstairs. He is frantically trying to rally the board members to his side. The elevator chimed loudly at the 40th floor. The long hallway was quiet. I walked right past Harlan's massive corner office. His brass nameplate was still bolted to the door. We finally reached the grand boardroom. I pushed the heavy doors wide open. 12 wealthy men and women sat around the massive obsidian conference table. At the head of the table stood Harlan. He froze completely when he saw me standing in the doorway in my white suit. "Good morning, everyone," I said, my voice incredibly steady. "I sincerely apologize for the dramatic interruption, but I strongly believe the small personal matter Harlan is currently referring to actually involves the blatant theft of nearly $4 million of shareholder money, and that makes it very much a serious boardroom matter." Milton stammered, standing up awkwardly. "Loretta. Harlan was just explaining the situation to us." "Harlan says a lot of things, Milton," I interrupted, walking slowly into the room. "But hard numbers do not speak lies. They simply are the truth." I walked straight to the completely opposite end of the long table. I placed my leather briefcase on the dark wood. I pulled out the thick forensic audit report. I slid it forcefully down the exact center of the long table. It spun perfectly, coming to a dead rest right in front of Milton's hands. Thaddeus moved efficiently around the room, handing out identical thick packets to each stunned board member. "This is a complete forensic audit," I said. "It details the exact amount Harlan and his mistress, Nadine, have illegally extracted from this company for their own personal luxury use over the last 5 years." Harlan shouted, slamming his hand on the table. "You cannot do this to me. Milton, tell her she cannot. I founded this entire company." "Actually, Harlan," Milton said quietly. "The original incorporation papers clearly show Loretta founded it. You were merely the first employee hired." "Look, okay, maybe I slightly overspent the budget," Harlan pleaded. "Maybe I got a little carried away with the lifestyle. I will pay it all back. Just deduct it from my yearly bonus. But you absolutely cannot fire me. I am Nexus Innovations. If I leave today, the stock drops to zero tomorrow. Loretta cannot run this massive company. She is fragile. She is just a back-end coder. She cannot lead people. He turned his desperate eyes to me. You will fail completely, he whispered maliciously. You are boring, Loretta. Absolutely no one wants to watch a quiet librarian run a global tech company. You will bore the entire world to death. You are right about one thing, Harlan, I said, standing tall at the head of the table. I have been entirely invisible by my own choice. But I am not invisible anymore. And I am officially calling for a formal vote. I am placing a motion to accept the immediate, forced resignation of Harlan Monroe, the termination of Nadine Thorne for gross cause, and a motion to formally appoint Loretta Evans as the interim chief executive officer. I second that motion immediately, Linda said firmly. All in favor? Milton asked the room. Every single hand went up into the air. Motion carries, Milton said heavily. He looked directly at Harlan with utter disgust. Harlan, we formally accept your resignation. Security will escort you out of the building right now. 2 large security guards stepped forward from the doorway. Harlan stood there, frozen. He looked completely stripped bare. He turned and walked out the heavy doors. The heavy doors swung shut behind him. The silence in the boardroom was suffocating. I stood at the head of the table. I looked at the shocked faces of the board members. Now, I said clearly, breaking the tension. Let us get back to work. I have a detailed technical roadmap for the next financial quarter that does not involve any trips to St. Bart's, but it absolutely does involve a 20% increase in our processing speed. Who wants to hear about it? Smiles slowly broke out around the long table. Genuine, relieved smiles. 6 months later, I walked out onto the main trading floor. The loud room went completely quiet as I entered. Then one person started clapping loudly. It was Quincy, my newly promoted director of operations. Then Linda from Human Resources started clapping. Then the whole massive room joined in. It was genuine cheering. Our corporate stock did not crash. In fact, Nexus is absolutely thriving. Our stock is up 15% this quarter. Nadine officially pled guilty to felony tax evasion to avoid a much longer prison sentence. She is currently doing mandatory community service, picking up dirty trash on the side of the state highway in a bright orange vest. Harlan moved back to Ohio to live in his mother Blanche's dark basement. He is currently working at a local electronics store, trying to sell cheap computers. He constantly tells the customers he used to be a powerful chief executive officer. They just nod politely, smile, and ask him where the computer cables are located. I sold the cold, empty penthouse. I bought a beautiful historic brownstone in Brooklyn. It has a wonderful green garden. It has a warm, inviting kitchen where I regularly cook meals for my true friends. I also took a portion of the recovered money and started a massive college fund scholarship program for young women in the technology sector. I named it the Evans Grant. Every single year, I completely pay for 10 brilliant girls to go to college so they never, ever have to rely on anyone else for their tuition or their survival. I am even dating again. His name is Silas. He's a wonderful architect. He does not care about my massive bank account. He genuinely likes that I am smart. On our very first date, he asked me to explain how quantum computing actually works. We sat and talked for 4 straight hours. I am truly happy. The kind of deep happiness that only comes from knowing you can survive a terrible fire and come out the other side made of unbreakable steel. Thank you so much for listening to my story today. It felt incredibly good to finally tell the absolute truth. If you enjoyed this wild ride, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Have you ever had to permanently cut a highly toxic person out of your life? I really want to hear your stories. Until next time, stay incredibly smart, stay very strong, and always keep your financial receipts. Goodbye.